kinship, succession, and mythology in diverse settings, their research primarily dealt with small, primitive societies, distant from the mores and concerns of the world's dominant script cultures. Conversely, most historians have focused on Western civilization, sustained intellectual engagement among Europeanists, and specialists studying the languages, cultures, and histories of other script cultures has remained surprisingly limited. Sociologists finally have tended to concentrate on modern societies. In their work, dynastic rule figures mostly as a stage in the development towards political modernity. Contrasts between these disciplines have been fading in terms of traditional areas of study as well as in methods. Nevertheless, no single overarching view of dynasty and kingship is available in the literature. This book examines the shared history of rulers and their families worldwide, from the first empires using written documentation to the French Revolution. It then considers the persistence of the dynastic impulse in the modern world, and invites listeners to view their age through the lens of dynasty. Zooming in on the point where sovereignty and lineage converge, it first and foremost explains the experience of kings, sultans, emperors, and caliphs struggling to establish themselves among their forebears and relatives, as well as in the machinery of government. What did figures on the throne during these 5 millennia of human history hold in common? How can we explain the troubled relationship among dynastic scions? What was the role of women on the throne as mothers, spouses, concubines, or daughters? How did regional differences and change over time impact these matters? Inevitably, the rules of thumb of kingship outlined in the following chapters resonate with leadership in other situations. Can they be understood as a guide to success? Recently, an abridged edition of the Reflections of a Chinese Emperor was marketed as a guidebook for leaders in all settings. Without a doubt, the emperor preferred many wisdoms, yet he did so first and foremost to establish his own reputation. Indeed, most rulers have been keen to underline their own accomplishments rather than divulge the dilemmas inherent in their role. Nevertheless, even embellished memoirs unveil some of the persistent complexities of supreme executive power, and listeners will recognize predicaments of modern leadership in this book. Defining problems was always easier than providing clear-cut solutions. Royal advisors understood that good advice would have to be gauged by the temperament of the leader as much as depending on the issue to be solved. Impetuous figures needed to be restrained, indolent characters activated. Harmonious leadership, they concluded, demanded a correct apportioning of responsibilities between the sovereign and his advisors. Dynasties were never limited to the supreme level of ruling sovereigns. A concern for family status and continuity will be found across the social spectrum. This consideration is relevant for this book in 2 ways. First, the notion of undivided authority developed only gradually. Rulers shared sovereignty, not only with their relatives, but also with hereditary elites wielding authority in the regions. Second, many dynasties persisting into the 21st century no longer hold sovereign power, which is now vested in legislative assemblies. Modern political dynasties function on the basis of the popular vote rather than as sovereign families. Business tycoons can inherit wealth as well as leadership without ever sharing in sovereign power. Nevertheless, the combination of leadership and family persists in the business world as well as in politics. Modern-day variants of dynasty occupy center stage in this book's final chapter. Family brings to mind reproduction and physical heredity. Dynasty, however, was never only a biological fact. Geneticists may be correct in arguing that 16 million descendants of the famed Mongol founder Genghis Khan, 1162 reigned 1206–27, can be traced in the modern world. Yet these distant relatives do not see themselves as Genghisid scions. Conversely, the genealogies so important for historic ruling houses typically included fanciful additions and connections. Royal power demanded prestigious forebears even if they needed to be fabricated. Preventing extinction, moreover, entailed frequent manipulation. Children were adopted and inserted in the family tree. Dynasty, in short, was always a construction. It was the result of a volatile mixture of cultural rules defining kinship, the vagaries of demography, and the attempt of families to ensure their continuity in power. The combination between lineage and sovereign power, the core of this book, can be retraced in the history of the word dynasty. Ancient Greek, dynasteia, denoted lordship or sovereignty in general, although the term dynasties referred to petty rulers.